What's up, guys and gals of the movement world? It's Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi, coming to you once again on behalf of Football Beyond the Stats in our Movement Play of the Week this week for Week 13 of the 2024 National Football League season. And this week, for Week 13, we are going to do something a little different. We are going to talk about something that needs to be talked about in today's National Football League with what's been unfolding for the most consistent, the most reliable kicker that the National Football League has ever seen in Justin Tucker, kicker for the Baltimore Ravens. And it happens to go along with that which what really we've been discussing throughout the course of this NFL season, namely in this theme that I wanted to thread throughout each conversation on riding the wave, the nonlinearity that comes with playing football at the highest of levels or performing any sporting activity for that matter at the highest of levels, the nonlinearity that is going to exist there, how a player navigates that global nonlinearity, but also deals with the complexity week in and week out, the numerous interacting component parts and the coalescing of those constraints. So I'm not going to show a play today, but instead we're just going to riff and maybe rant a little bit about what's been going on with Justin Tucker. And of course, if you don't know, as I mentioned, he is one of the GOATs, one of the greatest of all times, second most accurate kicker of all time. And that he was the number one, I know, for quite some time. But since last year, since 2023, where he started to show some inconsistency, he started to maybe show a little bit of the signs of this constant readaptation process of one's skill that needs to take place as one ages or one grows and evolves with finding the functional fits on the field to the problems that one is facing. Now, before we get in any deeper, I do want to give a shout out to my guy Blake for raising the question right off the bat because when this game was unfolding Sunday, the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Baltimore Ravens, where Justin Tucker, again, typically over the course of his NFL career, now the guy's 35 and he's been as consistent and as reliable as any other kicker the NFL's ever seen. But every time he comes up to make a kick, whether it's something as simple as an extra point, which he made one of two of, or whether it's a field goal, which he made two of four of, which makes 10 missed kicks on the year, there started to be some level of concern. And my guy Blake reaches out to me. He's like, if you were a skill acquisition specialist working for the Baltimore Ravens, what would you propose need to be done in order to shake up the snow globe a little bit here and assist Justin Tucker on his journey so he can get back to being who it is that he was? And I think it isn't so much of getting back to who he was, but getting to that which what he needs to be right now based on his own personal, individual, and organismic constraints. Again, notice I mentioned he's 35. So that will start to set the tone for some of the things that we're about to talk about. And whether a player is 35, 25, 15, or anything in between, we're in this process of continually finding a functional and adaptive fit with our current relationship and its environment. So even though we can talk about those 10 missed kicks, the nonlinearity is that no two movement problems are ever the same, neither are any two movement solutions, but we will find stability or consistency, maybe invariance there that one needs to gravitate to. But as action capabilities are changing, and as our life and our form of life is changing, our experience and our skill is getting shaped through our style, we must expect that we're going to evolve and change, particularly with the technique that emerges as part of solving and resolving that immediate movement problem, but also over time, the course of a season, multiple seasons, and the like. Now, a disclaimer or a few disclaimers here before we get deeper, because I got a bunch of different thoughts that we're just going to riff around and about here, but I think it's a very useful topic, particularly coming on the heels of my 2024 paper with Fabi Ott and Tyler Yerby on the role of a skill acquisition specialist. The disclaimer here: I've worked with a lot of NFL players, 135, in fact, over the last 16 years. Never a kicker. So that's first and foremost, never a kicker. So that's kind of number one disclaimer here. Number two, I don't know exactly what the Baltimore Ravens do in their special teams practices. Now, I do know what most teams do because I've attended a lot of NFL practices over the years and I've closely investigated the practice activities that most are doing. And I have been at Baltimore Ravens practice, but at the time it was a joint practice between them and another team where I had players on the other side. So, to be quite transparent here, I wasn't paying attention to that, which what Justin Tucker was really doing. But if you don't know how many teams practice, particularly place kicking, is usually the long snapper and the holder are with the kicker, with the special teams coach or coachees over on another field, like over completely separate from that which what is happening with the team. Now, some will bring them on back for a specific special teams period for short bursts, put the guy under pressure and attempt to make a kick, maybe to get the practice to end early or the like, right? And I guess I want to offer the disclaimer there because I don't know exactly what they're doing to try to remedy this. We can make some hypotheses around it based on what Justin Tucker himself has said, based on what John Harbaugh, the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens, has said as well. The other thing here, which is vital to understand, is if I were a skill acquisition specialist working with the Baltimore Ravens on the team organizational level, I would want to move into trying to tell the movement problem solving story with and alongside of Justin Tucker. Talk to him about what he's perceiving, what he's thinking about, and how ultimately he is approaching his ways of interacting with the problems. I don't know those things, but we can only speculate. And because of that, that experience that I might have watching teams practice and knowing how most teams really isolate the work that is done for all positions for this matter, but particularly kickers in making kicks, whether it's a field goal or a extra point, as well as then as a skill acquisition specialist partnering and collaborating with the athlete, talking about some of their process of solving the problem that's in front of them. Now, let's get the elephant out of the room. That elephant that is here that we want to talk about that I've already begun to touch on. 35 years old. And in the National Football League, that is ancient, right? However, for a kicker, kickers can perform 35 up to 40, maybe even a little older than 40 in some of those cases, right? But in order to do so, you have to be constantly adapting the nuances of your skill, or as most kickers would think about it, their technique, right? And these technical adjustments that Justin Tucker himself has already began to speak about, he's talked about it on a number of instances. Has said verbatim, and I'm looking at my notes here, back, I think, in week 4, the technical adjustments that I need to make are clear to me. I just need to get these technical adjustments made and made consistently, right? So he's talking a lot about technique or movement patterns, the movement actions themselves, I think, in most of these cases. And my recommendations, at least from the outside looking in, and I'm sure plenty of people across the internet, as well as maybe even people in the Baltimore Ravens organization, are kind of like beating their head against the wall over what Justin Tucker should be doing. So, from a skill acquisition specialist standpoint, let me throw another opinion or a few more opinions into the mix. So when we look at what Justin Tucker is doing, and I understand that I could have had a video here to show you this, but let's just keep riffing if we would in this really unrehearsed and really ranting type of fashion. On many of these balls, not many, all but one, he has pulled left. Okay. So he pulled it left of the uprights in all but one, the other one being one of the field goal attempts last week, which he pulled right. And you can actually see the disgruntlement and the bewilderment on Justin Tucker's face as he's like, looking at it to try to move to hook left. Like he didn't even know how he had struck it enough to where it veered right when he's expecting it even to go left. Like he's like willing it like a golfer might be to try to hook, 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 but it never did, right? And I think what we find from Justin Tucker now, first off, in his technical execution itself, in comparison to other kickers, he plants very close with his left leg to the ball and where the ball is being placed by the holder. I don't think it's a long snapper or holder operational error here in most of these cases. I think it's him himself probably losing speed a little bit because when you put your foot that close, you got to be able to compensate in bringing more speed and hitting the ball with enough power that it obviously gets it to where it is that you want it to go, and it also swings through the ball. Your leg will swing through a lot. It'll cross over in this way, and you see him planting really closely, his right leg swinging across violently, but he's not making the same type of point of contact as he once did for whatever reason. Again, I think a little bit here has to do with now how fixed and frozen he's become at each level of that movement problem solving process. His perceptions, what he might be looking at, when he's looking at it, whether he's looking from the uprights to the 11v11 landscape, you know, him being one of those 11, the snapper, the long snapper, and the holder, and that operational kind of interaction. Okay. And I guess that to me is we're finding him even as he lines up, he seems really fixed and frozen perceptually, intentionally, and then from an action standpoint. And that's might be why we see him really tight and again, bewildered because this fixed and frozen degrees of freedom is happening at every level of his human movement system and that problem solving process. We see the yips, if you will, and we see the constrained action hypothesis sort of playing out. This over internalization, especially when he says, the technical adjustments I need to make are clear. I just need to make them more consistently. So we see him maybe fighting this animal, this nonlinear journey, but he's trying to do it by fitting a square peg in a round hole, who he used to be with his technique to that which what he's doing. So when Blake asked me, what would you do as a skill acquisition specialist to sort of enter the mix? Of course, I'd always keep the interactive nature of the holder and the long snapper in, but I would love to see him have more reps, obviously in the more live ways, where the pressure and anxiety and the consequences are riding on his shoulders, and he's making those adjustments. It isn't that he's just repeating it by rote because he's trying to get his technique where he's refining himself. Now, again, I don't know exactly how the Ravens set up their practice activity design, and I don't know how many kicks the special teams coach and Tucker are accustomed to maybe having him kick on a daily basis, right? With the team riding on him making a kick in and kick out, that probably has to take place everywhere starting from the spring at OTAs and minicamp, and then into the summer in training camp, and then throughout the season. If it's really going to pressure proof him through those key performance inhibitors that would be pressure and anxiety and the like, and expect that it's not going to kind of shake up what he does in his process of execution. When I say process of execution, I'm not just talking about the technique. I'm talking about the way the skill emerges and comes to be, his perceptions, his cognitions, and his actions. And because I haven't been able to get in his movement problem solving story in this way and lock arms with him, I can only speculate on that. But I can say from the outside looking in, the main thing that I would think about is getting him to not go through his normal process of execution or his old process of solving that problem. The reason is I think we want to reorganize his perceptions, his cognitions, and his actions in relation to who he is and his current action capabilities, as well as his current movement capabilities as a whole. Again, we know that no two reps are ever going to be the same. So for a kicker and making kicks, even though one would think we want a repeatable, consistent type of technical execution and movement pattern, it's not quite the case, right? When that guy has to make that kick, it's still going to be alive. There's still going to be 11v11. There's still going to be from varying distances on a varying surface. I would actually try to get him to lean into that repetition without repetition that is inherently there in all human movement, but to add context condition variability to it. What do I mean by that? Where the problem could constantly be changing ever so slightly, and that channels into his process of executing. So that's a little different, but an extension of rep without rep. It's rep without rep of the perceptions, the cognitions, and the actions that is being forced or expected from the context condition variability. The problem and the way we approach the problem constantly changing. You can look at it as maybe a sort of form of differential learning if you want to, where this would open up degrees of freedom from my perspective, shake and loosen things up within his movement problem solving to help him look to strike the ball in as many different ways as humanly possible, maybe some that are very unorthodox to him. To not go through his normal process, but instead to perceive different things at different times within the process. Maybe focus more externally at the uprights for longer. Fixate and focus his quiet eye there a little longer, maybe between the uprights. Find a target point, someone in the crowd that he can target himself to that lies between the uprights. And then in that, intend to, so aim to act in a different way with every single kick where no two reps would be the same. So intend to strike it in different ways or change certain nuances, maybe your approach and your angle, where he's putting his foot in relation to the ball. Even though those things, guys and gals, I understand are very established, should be very stabilized for a 35-year-old kicker. But we're always changing. We never step in the same river twice. We are not the same man in the same river because neither are really truly the same, right? So here, you get him to lean in on that. You get him to start to make it his technique to be a little bit more flexibly adjustable and potentially adaptable, practically and relevantly to the problem that's at hand. And the problem that's at hand is not just that which lies in front of him that is there emergent, needed to be solved across situations and conditions, as we typically focus on our movement play of the week. But instead for him, it's in this problem solving process that takes place with every single kick as he looks to grow and adapt. And I think it's there that an SAS might be able to assist the special teams coach in investigating how we might be able to change and create practice conditions that allow these types of problem and solution dynamics to come to be for Justin Tucker and who he is right now. So I know I've heard plenty of people saying he's washed. They just got to release him. I'm not sure that's the way to go about it, but it is going to be the way to go about it if they just keep doing that, which what they've already done, which is get him to make those technical adjustments and try to make them more consistent. I think by adding more differential learning or more context condition variability as a whole, getting him to execute no two reps the same in practice, it actually will start to get him closer to finding out what technique, what actions are going to be right for him. And that adjustment or that adjustment process will be made somewhat more implicitly as opposed to explicitly. It will start to emerge. Now, can it happen in this short a period of time? Week 13 in the National Football League, when there's only a month and change left, and the Baltimore Ravens are going to expect Justin Tucker to make a kick at a time that could maybe mean a whole heck of a lot to them as a team? That part remains to be seen. That answer I don't necessarily have. And again, some of this is all purely speculative. Not some of it, all of it is pretty speculative. But I'm speculating based on my own experience that I've had with National Football League players of all levels and at many different positions. I believe that this could be the path. Now, I wish the Baltimore Ravens had a skill acquisition specialist to be able to have these conversations with, to be able to maybe inject some contemporary skill acquisition practice ideas into the mix as well. So Justin Tucker himself doesn't end up like a dog chasing their own tail. I say that giggling because my own dog is chasing her own tail right now in front of me. But um, I hope that this discussion, this rant, was enough to at least spark some ideas for you and yourself with the athletes that you work with and how you might be able to approach some things, no matter if you're working with kickers who are trying to make a kick under pressure, anxiety, fatigue, and the like, or this constant adjustment period, or whether you're working with running backs or wide receivers, defensive backs or linebackers, any other position, or really any other sport. I think these ideas that I just got done discussing and talking about can transcend sport movement problems no matter where it's taking place. So I know this movement play of the week was a little different than most. I enjoyed doing it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give me the thumbs up, hit subscribe, like, etc. Share it with your people. You know the ditty. I will talk to you guys in week 14. So for the movement play of the week and football beyond the stats, I'm Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi. I'll talk to you guys next week.